Hello, it is 23 degrees centigrade here in Abuja. That's because it's raining. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise. It is this lovely Monday morning. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
And a wonderful morning to you out there. New week, new opportunities. Enter it with a positive mindset. And like Chamberlain said, it is raining in the nation's capital. If you're driving, please be safe. I'm Kayla Megwa. Welcome to the show.
Well, you guys need the rain here. We can do it just a good weather for now. Amaya Makinde, good morning and welcome.
I know why. Some people don't want to be overtaken by the flood.
Come on, Chamberlain, you have to. Hey,
I know why, man.
Don't forget that Lagos is your alma mater.
Lagos
is your alma mater, Chamberlain. Don't mind Kayla sitting right next to you.
Alma who? Alma, wait,
See,
please.
He said Alma who? See, he belongs here now. Move on.
So how many times will I tell you? I belong to no one. I belong to everybody.
We'll see.
How many times will I say so? But you know, it's not all doom and gloom anyways. Look, have a look at this. This is a place that, look, if you haven't been here, maybe you should have a second thought about all of this. And Ayo, I know you have a lot about this to say to us.
Well, quite honestly, it's one of those iconic places in Nigeria. You know, we talk about biodiversity and all of that. Lekki Conservation Center is what you're looking at right now. It was established in 1990, actually, to serve as a biodiversity, conservation, and environment education center in Nigeria. It was built for the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, and it's reserved for the rich flora and fauna of the Lekki Peninsula, of course. It's a place that you want to get to. Look at it. I mean, who would have thought that such a place would exist in Lagos? And all around it, you can see, we're trying to give you a 360 view of the areas, the other locations around the Lekki Peninsula, the Lekki Conservation Center. It's something in the area of 78 hectares, you know, next to the Lekki Lagoon, actually, and near the Lagos Lagoon. As I said, it protects the peninsula, which consists of swamp and savanna habitats. It's a very, very, very beautiful and lush place. And maybe when Kayla finally finds her way to Lagos, either on foot or by air, she might pay a visit to this place. Yes.
Actually, I have been to this place.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay. I have been to this place. But I wanted to get some status update from you, Ayo, because it has that canopy walk. And I remember at the time they told us we couldn't go on the canopy walk because it wasn't safe. Has that been sorted? I know something happened in January where the place was closed down because we're trying to fix that canopy walk. Do you have an update on what's going on there now? Is it safe now?
Well, it's
these visuals.
It's an ongoing conversation, I believe, with the Lagos State government. But because the fact that it was closed down meant that there's something needed to be done. Most certainly, it's not something that government will risk. People risking their lives. But because this is a skyline, it's always a skyline we're showing you on this segment. We can't take you through that walk, Kayla. So you have to come to Lagos to find out.
I will.
Oh, that's actually lovely, guys. I mean, I didn't actually take into cognizance the fact that just checking through all of this, we've got speaking about Nigeria's biodiversity, when you look at that lovely, lush, the scenery you see there, you can imagine the length and breadth of this country. We actually do have, checking it out, over 864 species of birds, and then I think you might be surprised at this one, over 775 species of fish. And you thought, why is it you guys only talk about croaker and catfish all the time when you have several others? But guys, not to worry about that. So just check whatever you can, whenever you can. I mean, it just helps you relax and take away all the stress. So that is that about all of that. Let's move on and take you through some of the dailies this morning. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the papers this morning. And we'll begin with Nigerian Tribune this morning, and their focus is on the invasion of Oyo Secretariat over the weekend. tight security in Osun, Ekiti, Kwara, Ondo, Ogun. Governors, police urge residents to remain calm, say no cause for alarm. So these are the lead story and some of the riders associated with that particular story on the front page of Nigerian Tribune today. And, well, some reactions in some quarters about what was that all about. So that is the focus of Nigerian Tribune here today. From then on, we take a look at the Vanguard newspaper. They are back focusing on the tariff hike. TCN discos bicker over falling 20 hours supply. So this back and forth has been going on. Some who say we're supposed to be in band A, we don't get as much service as stipulated, ditto for band B, and it goes on. So how they resolve this will be of interest to many, I might add. And have a look at the Guardian newspaper. Sticky prices, poor control, upset consumers despite stronger naira. So that question subsists. They wonder, so how come it's not affecting commodities out there in spite of the gains that we seem to be recording? So I guess you might have to turn to the authorities who themselves are expected to speak up on this matter in turn. From then on to Nigerian News Direct, a similar theme, alleged misappropriation. EFCC recovers 32.7 billion naira, $445,000 from humanitarian ministry amid corruption probe. So that also gained some traction over the weekend, some back and forth as to the appropriateness of the reportage. So dailies are reflecting that again. Well, this Nigeria, on the same subject matter, humanitarian ministry scandal. We've recovered 32.7 billion naira, $445,000, says EFCC. Discreet investigations on Edu Umar Farouk Shehu opened other fraudulent dealings involving COVID-19 funds, World Bank loan, Abacha recovered loot released to the ministry. So, well, it goes on. So you might want to also get more perspectives if you're interested in reading that. Well, Daily Trust, we uncovered more fraud in humanitarian ministry ascribed to the EFCC. Daily Independent, focusing on the economy, oil production shortfall may threaten naira recovery. Experts, no, that's the last anybody wanted to hear. You want more gains to keep going on. And then PDP reps set to clash as they hold pre-NEC meeting tomorrow. That's at the bottom strip of Daily Independent here this morning, if you want to check that out. And then Abuja inquirer on ease as FCDA demolishes another estate in Abuja. But Blueprint is looking at internationally. Israel versus Iran. Nigeria world leaders warn allies against military reprisal. Yeah, you know how some of these things can escalate. So that is the version of Blueprint's newspaper this morning. Okay, so there you go. Those are some of the dailies here this morning. Well, not to worry. You can always go ahead and let us know whatever it is that you've got up to here today. Just look at those emails. Write us. We'll be glad to hear from you. But just give us a moment. We will be right back.
The Samoa agreement, which was signed by the federal government, is generating a lot of controversy and criticism. The federal government says it signed the agreement because it was a key legal instrument to promote cooperation between European Union member states, the Organization for African Unity, the Caribbean and Pacific states. Although the federal government have allayed the fears of Nigerians that there is no clause on lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and queer in the agreement, the Christian community still expresses concern over what the outcome will be if it does exist in the document when it is made public.
They want it to be channeled through the right authorities for proper determination.
But I think the government should just be accountable. If they are certain that these things are not in the agreement, we have the National Assembly there to look into all of this. We have the judiciary system to look into all these matters. So we just know that if it's not there, it's not there. And we're all learned in this country. At least most of us read and write, and we could also understand the nitty-gritties of this agreement.
Our educational curriculum has been compromised. There are so many countries, developed countries, where they sneak these things in the curriculum, teaching people that it's children, that is not just male and female anymore. We have so many, LGBTQ. So I'm not worried. What I feel we need to do as parents, as Christians, is to fortify the home front.
At St. James Anglican Church, the vicar speaks on his disapproval of the alleged clause in the agreement. He says Nigeria does not need any form of financial assistance if it will deepen moral decay in the country.
Form of agreement that should tie our country to any other country in the world, conditioning us to submit our morality for any piece of bread. We cannot go into any local agreement to begin to support lesbianism or any form of godless style of living.
While the federal government says the agreement is about education, food security, sustainable economic development, among others, Christians and many Nigerians expect it to stay that way, as the consequences of an LGBTQ clause will be there. Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
Let's start the conversation this morning with Mary Ekemezie, who is a legal practitioner, lead consultant, Emmy Consult, and she is also a member of the African Bar Association. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Is it a worthy conversation, this whole noise, some would say, about the Samoa agreement? Or you think Nigerians are just getting overly sensitive?
There is cause for concern, and it is a valid concern, particularly if you have been following the negotiations leading to the agreement of the final text. What has made this agreement particularly controversial is that unlike the previous, this agreement is superseding the Cotonou agreement that was signed in 2000 and was originally meant to have, a lapse in 2020. But because of the contentious nature of the agreement, there's another extension for about 2 years, another further extension until it was signed last year, November, if I'm not mistaken, and Nigeria did not sign at the time. And why is that? A bit of history into the agreement. So what this agreement is effectively a bilateral agreement that speaks about trade between the European Union, member states, and African states, Caribbean states, and Pacific states. In total, about 79 countries, and the EU, 27 countries. It was meant to drive trade, make trade easier, all of that. It looks good. But for these particular negotiations and these agreements, which we have now signed, and which is causing a lot of trouble, a lot of concern, is that the EU sort of shifted and then said, well, for this agreement, we're going to have 6 focal points. We're going to be looking at poverty alleviation. We're going to be looking at human rights. We're going to be looking at climate change. We're going to be looking at sexual and reproductive health rights. And 2 others, I think agriculture, and I don't remember the last one. Now, right there is, if you've had the benefit of looking at some of the papers, policy briefs issued by the EU team during the negotiations when they were going back and forth, they kept saying, we want to insist now on the, the UN SDG goals being sort of integrated into this document, all the human rights provisions integrated into the But the challenge is that our concept of human rights is vastly different from human rights from an EU perspective. Our cultural nuances are very, very significantly different. And even amongst this agreement, when I was also reviewing the paper briefs that they had issued, the EU themselves had issued to their member countries. They had said, well, we also have to look at security in the document we're negotiating with the Africans because we want to strengthen democracy. But that wasn't exactly the same level of concern they had with the Pacific or the Caribbean countries. And in some areas, two issues have come out. For something that was ordinarily meant to be a trade document, we now have you speaking about democracy and security and some sort of, on some level, power grab. And the second one is around human rights and the sexual, reproductive, what we call SRHR, sexual and reproductive health rights. When you hear that word, so first of all, I will respond to all of the sort of, it's been flying around on WhatsApp. LGBTQ, you will not find that word in this document. It doesn't exist in this document, deliberately so, because again, a lot of negotiations did go in, and there was, to be fair to the African countries, a lot of pushback. There was a lot of pushback on this particular point. However, if you're also conversant with what's happening on the international forum, you would know that sexual and reproductive health rights is the acronym for LGBTQIA. When you also hear about gender equality, it is also another acronym for abortion rights. It's also an acronym for transgender rights. It's an acronym for sexual orientation, and it doesn't mean the same. So when we say in Nigeria gender, we mean more often than not, we mean male and female. Having said that, I have seen a couple of forms by Nigerian businesses where you have male, female order. And I think, who is order in Nigeria? It's not on a scale. I'm not, at this point, I'm not thinking I should escalate. But what I do know from watching what has happened in other countries is that it is a slippery slope. It's a gradual creeping descent, and they just need a framework to make that descent happen. So that is why there is a cause for concern. This agreement, one, contrary to the Vienna Treaty on the law of treaties, does not, an international, agreed international norms, does not allow for exceptions. At the international level, recognizing that different countries have different things that are important to them, the Vienna Convention on law of treaties allowed that and requires that agreements have room for reservation. So you can say, well, I agree, I signed this, but I disagree with X, Y, Z, Z, Z.
Okay, so
this agreement that we have signed has no such provision. And the second another very worrisome thing, if you see any legal document at all, any law at all, one of the first things you see either at the beginning of the agreement or the end of the agreement is a definition clause. So that when we say gender, for instance.
So you don't think that the
there is none.
Is not also
there is none.
There? Okay.
So there is sufficient of grounds for concern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Gocha Chinedu-Collins is also with us this morning. He is an international law practitioner, and he is also a member as a counsel at Charles Anthony Lawyers. He joins us virtually. Good morning, Mr. Gocha. Thank you for joining us this morning. Well, what are your thoughts about this whole conversation around the Samoa Agreement? Are you as optimistic or are you pessimistic about the concerns Nigerians have?
Thank you very much for having me. Very quickly, my position on the point is multifaceted. The concerns of Nigerians is quite valid. The reason is this: we are at a time in our country where we seem to be quite apprehensive about a lot of things. Now, on the content of the Samoa Agreement, I would comfortably say that the visibly controversial articles, which are articles 2.5, that is articles 2 sub 5, and articles 29 sub 5. These articles specifically 2.5 talks about mainstreaming gender perspectives, and article 29 sub 5 talks about sexual and reproductive rights. Now, these points are quite very sensitive issues, both in Nigeria and on the international forum. So when you talk about gender, it's no longer about being male or female. It has been broadened. So when the issue of the term gender is mentioned, it raises concern as to what is the limit of the interpretation of the word. Now, on the other hand, we also have to recognize that Nigeria has still a sovereign state. If you look at Articles 2 sub 2 of the Samoa Agreement, you would see that it recognizes the sovereignty of states. And in as much as Nigeria has signed this agreement, in as much as the principle of pact sunt servanda also exists in Article 26 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, there is some limitations as to the extent to which the Samoa Agreement will be binding on Nigerians. Of course, we know of Section 12 of our Constitution. Although Articles 27 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties says that a party to an agreement or a party to a treaty cannot rely on their local laws to avoid complying with the obligations under a treaty. And it also talks in Section 46, in Articles 46 of the same Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, that yes, a state party can actually deviate from an international agreement if it is contrary to their local laws, and that local law is quite a fundamental one. Now, we know that Nigeria already has Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. You understand? So the point is that so far as the National Assembly has not ratified or has not domesticated or enacted the content of that agreement, while it has some effects on Nigeria, there is a limit to that effect. Okay. But that is moot.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ogocha. Madam, let me quickly ask you this. Part of what explanation the federal government, first of all, how satisfied are you with the federal government's explanation?
So what they have said is, we filed a declaration saying X, Y, Z. We hear them. But we also know that that agreement, as I said, doesn't allow for that. Other treaties allows for that. So it's neither here nor there, the import of that document. And I hear my colleague around the laws have to be domesticated, for which we are very grateful. However, if you have been paying attention to what's happening at the international sphere, you would also recognize that there are what is the word I would use? A lot of soft play at work, soft power play at work. Now, if we've signed on this document, which we have signed, ostensibly we have agreed to the provisions. One of the provisions in this agreement is that it allows the EU to bypass the government, and the EU insisted on this provision when they were negotiating the agreement to fund civic organizations, direct funding to civic organizations who align with their EU values.
So that means you are essentially saying that they can break our laws.
Will they break our laws? Well, we have signed this agreement, have we not?
No, I'm asking you a direct. So you can say they can break our laws on our land, and
so let me use a common example.
And abrogate our sovereignty on our own land. I'm trying to see how that makes sense.
We know, if we're being honest to ourselves, that this happens already in Nigeria, if we are saying the truth. Abortion today is illegal. But we have in Nigeria today international NGOs funding and action abortion in Nigeria.
So who is...
So just saying that is one thing for sure that happens in Nigeria. For sure.
You have proof of that?
I have proof. We reported to the police once, nothing came out of it. Just saying, that is one. And there are, it's called soft power. It's not in your face, it's not up there, but it is happening. The second question about we should be paying attention to, there is, if you're looking over the last 10 years or counting, if you're paying attention again to what's happening in culture, in the movies, advocacy, there is an increase in rise. Very subtle, which is, again, the same playbook they've used in every other country where this has happened successfully, in almost normalizing LGBTQ. It's coming up more often in conversations. You're hearing it in plays alluded. It's also, what's the word, gradually weakening that sort of alarm you get. And I would use a very graphic example. I apologize for that. When the first killings in the Middle Belt started, everybody was horrified. What's this? Are those killings still going on? Yes. Are we horrified? Yes. Is it the same level of horrification? No. Some level of desensitization has happened because it's gone on for too long. There is only so much the human mind can take. And that is what the concern with this is. Would we see an immediate in the next 1-2 years? No. But we will see a weakening of our values. Follow the money is what it's called. And there is incredible amounts of money available for this. It's soft power.
Mr. Agwacha, what's your take on what Madam has just said?
Well, the truth is that I think we, Nigerians generally, we are not looking at other parts of the agreement. We seem to be focused on just the clauses that talks about gender and sexual and reproductive. Entire agreement, you're going to see that Articles 46 talks about science and technology, research. Article 47 talks about research, ICT, and digital economy, and all that. Climate change in Articles 57 to 59. So essentially, it's not just about we're not just looking at gender rights or reproductive rights. We are looking at a lot of. Personally, I would consider the agreement as a salad agreement, because it has a lot of things. It's not just about trade. You're also looking at labor rights, recognition of decent employment. You're looking at the rights of the youth to participate in the societies. So you're also looking at migration and mobility, and curbing illegal migration, refugee rights, and all that. So the agreement, it's not just about gender rights. It has to do with a lot of other things, which I believe that Nigeria could benefit from. So while we're looking at it from the perspective of how it may conflict with our domestic legislations, I think we also have to take cognizance of the fact that this agreement has a lot of other things which I believe as a state in the international arena, Nigeria will benefit from.
Interesting that you call it a salad agreement. I'm just hoping it doesn't have anything that can cause some kind of diarrhea, because that's what Ms. Kemizie seems to be talking about here now. Let's say that this is an opener of conversations about this matter, because it is not just something that is going to go away. And with the issues raised so far, we definitely have quite a length of way to go on this matter. Thank you so much for joining us. Agwacha Chinedu Collins is an international law practitioner. He's also a counsel at Charles Anthony Lawyers. And we've also had Mary Kemizie, a legal practitioner, lead consultant at MA Consult, and she's a member of the African Bar Association. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we're back right after now for another conversation equally interesting. Do stay with us.
Diplomats and officials of member countries gather in the State House for the 65th ordinary session of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government. The meeting commences with the arrival of the chairman and other heads of member state. Attending for the first time is Senegalese President Diomaye Faye.
Ladies and gentlemen,
in his welcome address, President Tinubu addresses the issue of insecurity in the region and urged member states to commit more to providing the needed resources to combat the issue.
Let me underscore that a peaceful and secure society is essential for achieving our potential. As we move to operationalize the ECOWAS Standby Force, ESF, in combating terrorism, I must emphasize that the success of this plan requires not only strong political will, but also substantial financial resources.
Highlighting the challenges confronting the region, he emphasized the need for unity.
It is imperative that we unite as a community and develop innovative approaches to unleash our vast economic potential. We must continue to identify and develop partnerships that promote investment in key sectors and promote regional trade.
He said the decision of the three Sahel countries of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to withdraw from ECOWAS has been noted. The meeting then moved into a closed session. Several hours later, the meeting was thrown open. President Tinubu was invited to accept to serve a second term.
I've accepted to continue the service with great members and great minds that have committed to democratic value and the journey for us in the region. I'll continue my utmost best to serve our interests and build on democratic value and the structure that we inherited.
The meeting ended on that note, and the president of ECOWAS Commission addressed the press on some of the resolutions taken on the issue of the three Sahel countries.
I think you've all been here when the president of Senegal has indicated his acceptance to serve as facilitator for ECOWAS in our engagement with the three IOS countries. And this is in the spirit of engagement that our leaders believe should continue, because, as you rightly said, we don't only share borders, we share families, we share communities. And the leaders are determined to do everything possible to keep our community together.
He also touched on the issue of the region's single currency.
The time frame given for the launch of the single currency is 2027, provided the various convergence criteria are met. The challenge is meeting those convergence criteria, and the member states are encouraged to work on those criteria. So the time frame for now is 2027, and until the heads of state change that time frame, we will go by that.
As the body prepares to celebrate its 50th anniversary next year, it's been agreed that a special extraordinary session will be put together to consider its future. From the presidential villa, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
All right, welcome back. Yes, indeed, we'll be joined by Femi Otobanjo, who is a professor of international politics and strategic studies at the NIIA, to speak to us about the re-election of President Bola Tinubu for the second term as chairman of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Good morning, Prof. I hope you can hear us. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, I mean, when he was first elected in Guinea-Bissau, he did say that he was going to deepen democracy, promising a standby force for security and regional integration. So, re-electing him for second term as chair, many wonder, okay, so on what basis, though, do you think he's fulfilled those terms for which he did promise in the first term?
Well, you know, this first year of President Tinubu's chairmanship at ECOWAS has been very, very challenging. He went in as president at the time when there was this coup in Niger, and he tried to mobilize ECOWAS to respond vigorously, up to the point of threatening to send in the military to restore the overthrown government of Niger. But that didn't come to anything, because in the end, there was no constituency for an invasion or military intervention in Niger. But nonetheless, what that indicated was that democracy was going to be a major element in the agenda of President Tinubu. Of course, and if you remember, if you relate it to his own, to Nigeria's foreign policy, his own 4 pillars of Nigeria's foreign policy, in which democracy is number 1, development, demography, and diaspora. Democracy has been in the front burner of ECOWAS agenda in the last 1 year. They have not succeeded in getting the provision for constitutional governance to be effective in Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Niger. But and unfortunately, it seems that ECOWAS is about to fragment with the Alliance for the Sahel, recently signing a mutual defense pact. It's been a challenging year, and I'm not sure that there's much we can say about progress in terms of democratization in the ECOWAS region.
So clearly, he'll be expected to do something a little more to integrate all the other countries where the coup d'etat happened, because those seats were really empty. What would you say are the expectations of him specifically regarding those countries?
Yes,
Go ahead, Prof.
Yes, the reality, of course, is that the problems are there. We must not minimize it. The cadres or the majors in those 4 countries are digging in. I think Mali is talking about a 5-year transition program. I think the focus of ECOWAS must be to restore democracy in those countries. And it doesn't seem that they are moving very much in that direction yet. Those 3 of them have indicated that they were going to leave ECOWAS. Of course, the ECOWAS treaty stipulates that they need to give 1 year's notice, and within which there can be mediation and negotiation and compromise, and maybe they can change their minds. But it seems that the corners or other majors, the junta in those 3 countries are not really compromising yet. They're not making any compromises. Although I must say that the Alliance for the Sahel is not an alternative to ECOWAS. It is a mutual defense agreement. I'm hoping that it that those three countries will still find their way back into ECOWAS, particularly when they return to democratic governance. But that's still a bridge too far yet. We don't see them coming back because they're still trying to impose their own identity on their countries, and they are being encouraged by Russia, and they're emboldened by that encouragement. And I do not see that they will be coming back. They will be active in ECOWAS yet.
Okay, Prof, just so we can get some updates and understand where we are in the conversations, especially when it comes to unconstitutional change of government in ECOWAS, and of course terrorism. Recently, at the ECOWAS Secretariat here in Abuja, we saw that there are two suggestions given by chiefs of defense staff in the region about this standby force. One of them was for 5,000 men, the other one is for 1,600 and something men, and how much it will cost to have that force in place when these sorts of situations come up in in countries in ECOWAS. What do you make of this standby force? And do you think it's something that should be done immediately as President Tinubu resumes, because that's the word, he resumes as ECOWAS chair again?
Yes, I think ECOWAS needs some form of military arrangement that can respond to challenges in the sub-region. What I'm not sure of is that whether you can have a standby force that will intervene in the country in the event of a military coup. That may be difficult. But there are a lot of problems in West Africa, in the ECOWAS sub-region, that may require the intervention of a regional force. We saw that with ECOWAS. ECOWAS was successful in Liberia and Sierra Leone. But that was because Nigeria bore the brunt of funding and providing troops for ECOWAS. So we need, maybe ECOWAS maybe that kind of force, that kind of regional force may be useful in the fight against terrorism. That's where their focus should be, not on enforcing democracy. That may be a little bit difficult. As we have seen, the three countries of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have signed an alliance, a mutual defense alliance, in which aggression against one is going to be considered to be aggression against all. In which case, if you want to intervene in Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali will automatically join in responding to such intervention. So ECOWAS needs some kind of military arrangement to be on standby, but whether that will be meant for restoring democracy or enforcing or maintaining democracy is a different ballgame. But there are a lot of things that a regional force can do. A regional force can help to do peacekeeping work in where there's civil strife in the country, and the local military may not be powerful enough to manage the situation. That the regional force can be invited to participate and so on. But I'm not sure that the purpose must be to restore democracy in the country, because sometimes these coups are a popular response, or a response to popular demand of against bad governance. So what ECOWAS needs most is good governance in the region, not a military arrangement that is intended to intervene when a coup takes place. ECOWAS needs to tighten its protocol in terms of good governance. One of the elements of good governance is not just about military rule, it's about presidents that are there prolonging their tenure. There is Togo, Yadima in Togo, there is Katara in Ivory Coast, we almost had Sali in Ivory Coast, and in Senegal, wanting to prolong their tenure. That must be prevented. I think any country where there's a prolongation of tenure, the president, that country should be suspended. It's a coup. It's a military coup against the people. So ECOWAS needs to focus more on good governance so that it can justify, it can have the moral leverage for its protocol on constitutional change. Right now, because there's so much bad governance in the region, people welcome coups. And because of that, it's now difficult. It's very difficult for ECOWAS to go and work against the wish of the people. If the people of Niger want a coup, you know, is it the business of ECOWAS to go and tell them not to have it?
Indeed, indeed, Prof. You know, also that conversation is one that is being had, at least from the few events that we've been able to attend on this topic. One of them also that came up was the concept of funding. If you're going to have a regional force, we can't have a situation like you mentioned in ECOMOG where Nigeria was footing most of the bill. We have to get everyone involved. And, you know, those conversations are still ongoing. But you just mentioned a very crucial point, which is the fact that good governance is priority. And in a place where there's no good governance, people, if there's a coup that topples that government, it will seem like a popular demand. But what that has done really is talk about the importance of leadership in ECOWAS. With President Tinubu at the helm of affairs, how do we get these leaders in the ECOWAS region to behave well? Is there anything in ECOWAS that compels them not to extend time in office, provide good governance, ensure that non-kinetic measures to stop terrorism are being enforced? Is there anything that President Tinubu, as head of ECOWAS, can do in this matter?
Yes, I think the Yoruba people have this interesting program. That is, there's a fundamental problem with ECOWAS. That is, you know, talking about remote and immediate causes. You know, the problem of ECOWAS is that it started as a general all-commerce integration. If you look at the model of Europe, countries are admitted into EU on the basis of several performance criteria. It must be a democracy. Your human rights records must be almost 100%. Your economy must be free and open to foreign trade, and so on. So many criteria. ECOWAS started by, of course, ordinarily we understand why they should, because these are new states that are just coming into being, and you needed to begin integration. So everybody came into it. Dictators, military rulers. In fact, it's just interesting that the two people who were the original facilitators of ECOWAS were military people. Yadema, who overthrew a government in Togo, and General Yakubu, who was part of a coup in Nigeria. So when you have an association that has no basic values, no values of good governance at the beginning, how do you begin to enforce that? There's no, you know, everybody comes to ECOWAS. As I said, Qatar is on its third term, and he was one of the loudest advocates of military intervention in Niger. And Yadema is still there since his father died. So it's who are the people to make the rules about democracy and good governance. But that's what we need in this part of the world. This ECOWAS region is one of the poorest in the world. It is the epicenter of terrorism in Africa. It is a victim of desertification, climate change. Our youths in this sub-region are moving to Europe through the desert, through the Mediterranean, and dying in their hundreds and thousands. So what do? You have to have you want to have a situation in which you can retain your young people in your own region, in your own country.
Well, Prof, we're winding down now. So could you tell us, can we say that ECOWAS has actually benefited the states economically? Because that's what it is, economic community.
Yes. Well, the truth of the matter is, they are saying, I always like to use comparative proverbs. And they say, if you think education is expensive, try literacy. If you think democracy is expensive, try autocracy. It is not that ECOWAS has done too well, but we need an ECOWAS. We need a regional body where people can gather and share ideas and share options and strategies about how to move the sub-region forward. We need integration. We need to be able to trade with each other. We need to be able to have movement of people across frontiers, and so on. There are many common problems that no single country can solve on its own. Like the problem of climate change, of desertification, of mass migration. These are multilateral problems that countries must work together. So we need an ECOWAS that will be the facilitator, the organizing institution for the efforts of the region to move forward. It is not that ECOWAS has done excellently well, but we need, in spite of that, we need an ECOWAS.
So for those countries and their citizens who feel ECOWAS has not actually benefited us economically, what would you advise ECOWAS to do, probably to retool, to address those concerns?
Continue to work in that direction. If you look at commentaries about ECOWAS in scholarly journals, there's general agreement that ECOWAS has not been wonderful in terms of results, economic development results. But it's there to help to lead the discussion, to lead efforts at changing things. And we need to empower it to continue to lead that effort. It's a multilateral problem. We have too many multilateral problems. Look at terrorism, for example. No single country has been able to deal with it. So we need multilateral efforts. And ECOWAS is there to help to facilitate that. If that's all it does, I think it will be useful for us to keep it, to continue to use it as a forum for synchronizing, synthesizing efforts at meeting the problems of the sub-region.
Well, the president also did say this at the AU, that Africa needs a standby force to combat terrorism. Now he's reiterated the same thing in ECOWAS, saying they must fund it if we need to stand together and fight terrorism. Do you see those countries pulling their weight in ECOWAS?
No, well, that's the danger we face. I'm not enthusiastic about this regional force, because at the end of the day, if you want a regional force in ECOWAS, it will become a Nigerian body. That's my worry. Nigeria is today facing massive economic problems. People are shouting all over the place, we are suffering. This is not the time to go and invest in some romantic exercise of a force that at the end of the day will become just a Nigerian force. Look at what we have, a multinational joint task force that is based in Jamena. What effect have they had on Boko Haram and other terrorist groups that are operating in the sub-region? So, and of course, what you find about regional force in Africa, in West Africa particularly, is that we do not produce any of the equipment that we use. So we are just going to be burdening our economy with foreign purchases that we cannot afford. We are not have to equip the force with American weapons, with British uniform, with Scandinavian helmets, and so on. That's what we are going to do, just throw money away in the name of a symbolic activity that may not have any practical result. So I think that countries should be ready to have units that are international operations units that can be sent forward at short notices to join with other forces in a multilateral effort, not have a standby force that will have the paraphernalia of secretariat, commander, and all the expensive gadgets that we do not produce and cannot afford.
All right, Professor Femi Otobanjo of International Politics and Strategic Studies at NIA. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good day.
All right, so Business Morning on Sunrise, it comes up next.
Thank you so much, Chamberlain. Good morning, everyone. It's a brand new week with all the promises and potentials that it holds. Let's make the best of it right here on Channels Television. This is Business Morning on Sunrise Daily, and we're doing business for just about 30 minutes. We start from oil prices, where it dipped on Monday after rising for 4 weeks as the prospect of a ceasefire deal in Gaza eased geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, while investors are assessing potential disruption to United States energy supplies from that storm barrel. Let's look at the numbers this morning and see that it's red 0.1%, $86.42. That's what we have for Brent. While for WTI of the United States, where you were looking at that situation with the storm, $82.88, and it's down 0.3%. And we know that, of course, the talks, U.S. ceasefire aimed at ending that 9-month war in Gaza, that's underway and it's affecting prices. Spot closures could bring a temporary halt to crude and liquefied natural gas exports, oil shipments to refineries, and motor fuel deliveries to those plants. Also, investors are watching out the impact of the elections from the United Kingdom. You know, something new happened there. France and Iran last week. All of this will have impact on geopolitics and energy policies. And then we come to Nigeria to look at the Naira, where we see not a very common picture is what we see between NAFEX and NAFEM. Normally they're always on the same direction, but for the close on Friday, that was not the case. We saw that there was a gain on NAFEM. It gained and closed at 1,509.67 kobo from 1,520. That's a whole lot of movement we see there, going from 1,520 to 509. And NAFEX, however, there was a drop right there, a 0.31% drop to close at 1,521 naira 73 kobo. I also learned on the parallel market that there was also a huge gain on the naira at the close of trade on Friday. I know that the central bank has been updating us on Forex inflow. I guess that news has filtered into activities in the market and the value of naira. Of course, we'll hope to see more of that this week as we begin opening the market with 1,509 naira. Well, another good news comes from a recent report compiled by the Financial Institution Trading Center, FITC. It shows that banks in Nigeria recorded a significant drop in losses to financial fraud in the first quarter of this year, as the amount lost in the period declined by 77.62% compared to the previous quarter. The fraud and forgery report indicates that banks lost 468.42 million naira in the first quarter, a substantial decline from the 2.09 billion that was lost in the final quarter of 2023. That's a good one right there. The report cites computer and web fraud, mobile fraud, and POS-related fraud as the top 3 prevalent forms of fraudulent activities, consistent with the trend observed in the previous period. That's for the final quarter of 2023. Now we're continuing our conversation on driving food security in Nigeria. And yes, I know we've been in your face, and also we've been in the face of the Minister of Agriculture for a bit now. We intend to stay there until we get solution. We've been playing this to you. You've been seeing it in the past couple of weeks, almost a month now. I'll just let you read through it. Yeah, so we had that conversation on Friday with an analyst, Dr. Nia Kishiju, and well, he suggested that the Minister of Agriculture should not take all the blame when it comes to ensuring food security in the country, because most of the resources are under the control of the state and the local government. So today we're looking at the role of the subnationals with Dr. Debo Akonde. Is the executive advisor on agribusiness to the governor of Oyo State. He's also the Director General, Oyo State Agribusiness Development Agency. Dr. Debo, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Great. So we had a conversation on food security, and I mean, I'm sure you agree with me that it's a conversation that needs to be had until something changes in the country, because the issue of food insecurity is really glaring us in the face at this time. But our guest on Friday suggests that perhaps one of the reasons we're not seeing active movement, especially about a year since President Bola Tinubu declared the state of emergency on food insecurity, is because the resources are with the states and the states are not collaborating with the federal government. The states control the land, the water resources, and so they have the huge responsibility to ensure there's food security in the country. How would you react to this?
Thank you very much. I think that's a very correct statement that I agree towards, that there is a need to consistently have a collaboration between the federal, the state government, and the local government as well. Much more because the state government is the one that have the farmer, state government is the one that have the land, while the federal government basically have control over policy, and law and legislation and all what have you. But I think it's also very instructive that for analysts to check what is already ongoing with the state as well. We can't completely say that the sub-nationals, are not doing much. They need to do much more. That is clear. But then we have a good number of the sub-nationals that are doing a lot, and I can speak for your state at this particular point in time. What has been done, in terms of support to ensure that the food security in Nigeria, is maintained and sustained. The interesting thing with the state is that it is not just now that we started, engaging, on the area of food security. 5 years ago, we have developed a strategy, that will help us to ensure that we become food sustained, and we also become a player in the global food value chain. And that has necessitated, some of the approaches that we have adopted. There is a saying among the agricultural experts, across the whole of Africa, that there is nothing like agricultural transformation without rural infrastructural transformation. I mean, if you produce all the food in this world and you are losing majority of it to post-harvest, and also you are losing them to inability to transport those food to areas where it needs to be consumed or marketed, and it's a waste of energy and resources. So Oyo State government, over these 5 years, has ensured that they put their money where their mouth is. If you check very well, over 67 to 70% of the road construction that has taken place in Oyo State in the last 5 years happened in the rural area. And this is opening up, our rural area that has the vast land for agricultural production. Beyond this as well, most of the feeder roads, within the state has commenced, construction also to be able to link into the farms where the farmers are producing. Beyond that, we are not, we've developed diverse systems that is complementing what has been the general norms in Nigeria. The general norms in Nigeria is that we've focused strongly on the smallholding way of agriculture, which is good, which is okay. There is nothing wrong in that. But with the increase in population and demand for food globally and even in Nigeria, you need to complement this smallholding system with a more better structure, system as well. And for us in our state, we have adopted that as far back as 4 years ago. And what we have done is to start creating an ecosystem and an environment that supports, increased involvement of medium to large investors across the food value chain of agriculture in Oyo State. And what we've been doing is to use our resources to build diverse ecosystem of space for this private sector to survive or to exist. So you find out that we've, of course, the popular one is known as the Virtual Agribusiness Industrial Hub that we have built, and we have close to around 10 private investors, medium to large, that are within this hub that are now doing crop production and are also processing those products within that particular hub. We've also ensured that some of the critical factors, that impinge against productivity and production of crops within our state, we started overcoming them. So now, in our key areas and our key hubs, you will see us with, you will see seed farms, where we are producing early generation materials, and these early generation materials support productivity and production. For example, we've been using old materials to produce cassava that is giving you maybe 6 tons per hectare. Now this material that we have can give you close to 15 to 20 tons per hectare. This matters a lot. This is not just about cultivating lands, but the materials we are using in terms of production also are critical and very, very important.
All right,
these materials, Yes. Yeah.
So while we applaud your state for, these laudable steps you have taken, but I'm sure you agree with me that even with all of this, we still have the threat of food insecurity. That means there's a need for collaboration, not just with the federal government, but even among states. And I do know that commissioners of agriculture from the Southwest met some time ago. Could you tell us what's going on when it comes to the issue of collaboration? As you've noted, you still need the federal government. How do we attract that might, federal might, to help in this area of infrastructural development, so that even though the state controls the land and the farmers, there's a collaboration that gives us food as a country at the end of the day?
I think the federal government needs to continuously use what we refer to as a targeted approach, rather than an approach that you think is applicable to all. We are a country, but we have divergence, in terms of who we are. Our lands are different, our vegetations are different. What is the need in this probably southwest of Nigeria? It's completely different, but what is the need in the northeast part of Nigeria, in terms of food production, even though we have some areas that are very similar with all of them. And what do I mean by that? If I limit myself to southwest for now, one of the critical components, of agricultural production in the southern part of southwest of Nigeria is land preparation or land clearing. This is not a major issue in the northern part of Nigeria. I have never, at a point in time, seen, a major intervention around the issue of land clearing in the southwest of Nigeria. I think this is very critical, and this is some of the discussion that the commissioners of agriculture within the region is having as part of their major discussion. There are lands, there are arable lands, there are lands that are good for production, but the cost of clearing it is humongous, And this is some of the areas where I think the federal government can have an intervention, of support states. While probably in the northeast of Nigeria, there will be another major areas that they are interested in, that are very peculiar to them, that needs to be focused on. Among the southwest governors, the commissioners, the discussion also followed how they can ensure that they open expanses of land, beyond the one that is currently being cultivated, and create a system where we have medium to large investors, to invest within the region to support the current effort of the smallholders as well. Part of the discussion also look at the necessity to ensure that we engage in ensuring that we create a system to support the rural area. It's not just to produce on the farm. If I produce on the farm, then what happens? And then the mechanization approach as well is very, very critical. Was about mentioning that one of the approach that was been adopted within Oyo State, and that might be something that will be of a great interest to the southwest, is the subsidization of tractorization by private sector. Not just to go and be buying tractors all over the place by public sector. Some of the things that we do as public sector are not our responsibilities. They are things the private sector should be doing rather than us. So what Oyo State government has done is to say private sector continue to provide support in terms of tractorization, but we will subsidize because of the cost of using a tractor that has gone very high. Lagos State government has an amazing approach that they use in terms of food banks as well. That other states in the southwest can also be feeding into, because you have a higher market in terms of consumption in Lagos, and the purchasing power in Lagos is quite strong, probably compared to the other part of the southwest also. So all this complementarity approach is very much there that we need to look into. Just a couple of days ago, and I will use that as an example, and why it is important to build rural infrastructure. I went and I do that consistently. Went to some of our rural space, and on one of the roads that was constructed, I stood there for 2 hours, 10 minutes. And within that 2 hours, 10 minutes, I counted 49 what we call pickups of cassava, 2 hours, 10 minutes, okay? 49 of cassava trucks. This is quite a lot, and this is one entry point, within the state. And because of that, I set out some of my staff to now do a quantification of the numbers of that kind of vehicle that passed through that particular road. Consistently now, for the past 4 days now, we have seen similar figure on average of around 47 every day within just a couple of hours. So for me, this is critical. This is very, very important. And we are going to use that to do an analysis to get the data around the numbers of that kind of materials that is moving within the state, for processing in our state. So, I mean, this is critical, it's important, and I think it's an essential area that the state has to be looking into. Again, I've mentioned that the federal government needs to complement this by providing resources to the state to get this done at the right time and on time.
All right, so we need a coordinator for that. So I guess we are back to the Minister of Agriculture if we're going to have federal input. But thank you so much for your time and sharing some of those perspectives and strategies that you're using in Oyo State. Dr. Deba Akonde, Executive Advisor on Agribusiness to the Governor of Oyo State.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a break. When we come back, another conversation, important ones, awaits you. Welcome back. Still watching Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. And the ease of doing business is not a general topic and everybody's concern, especially when we look at, how do we buffer some of those consequences of the reforms. And we've seen the president move to give that executive order withholding tax where small businesses are exempted. And that's just one of it. We hope to see the implementation of it. We had that conversation on Friday. I hope you did not miss that. If not, you can always go to our YouTube channel to watch that on Business Incorporated. But now let's take it further with the Director General of the Women Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture in Nigeria. She's the first. And this chamber is a couple of months old, so I'm glad. I think I'll be one of those putting you on TV as the DG, Mrs. Wemi Eribo. Ms. Eribo, good morning, and do I say congratulations to you, first pioneer DG with the new chamber, speaking for the women and all of that.
Thank you, Ini. Good morning. Yes, indeed, congratulations will be good. Thank you.
All right, so now I'll start with you. Switching from being a geologist to speaking for women in business, I mean, what a gap. How are you going to cope? What's the plan?
I mean, I've been doing this already for a number of years, so the plan is already ongoing. I think it's just been an interesting transition, moving from core oil and gas now into entrepreneurship and really spearheading focus and support for women entrepreneurs. Maybe there's a book that will come out of that eventually. But of course, I started my career in oil and gas and had the opportunity to venture into the development space, where I saw some of the negative effects that women go through. And I think for me, coming into entrepreneurship at that time, I then realized that entrepreneurship is a tool in which we can use to accelerate women's economic empowerment. And really that's since then that I've really just thrown myself behind that. Also run businesses myself as well, but also thrown myself into the support end of women's entrepreneurship and financial inclusion to really just support women, because I believe very strongly that, with money in the hands of women, there's so much that we can do, and data speaks to that already. So I think for me, yeah, that's the transition, but it's definitely something I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life.
Yeah, well, I hope you look out for the men too, because these days it seems we have so many voices for the women and the men are being left out. So, I mean, let's not risk it, making the men endangered species. So, but I mean, at a time like this, we have a lot of chambers of commerce in Lagos State, national, and all of that. And these are not easy times to do business. I spoke to a woman over the weekend who I interviewed a couple of years ago. She had a bakery. So I called her to say, oh, I know you're now a big woman. And she said she opted out of doing business. So it's really not an easy time at this time. But I mean, I'm wondering, what's your plan as the chamber? What are you going to do differently? Because already we have a lot of chambers of commerce and associations and all of that. What's going to be different about you? What's your plan to drive these women's voices in business?
Thank you for that, Ini. I think for us, it was the chamber, this Women Chamber of Commerce has recently evolved out of the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture. Within that chamber, there was a women's trade group which existed, and this was created in 2005. But I think along the line, you do realize that it's extremely important within the chamber movement to give women the autonomy, to give their voices the autonomy within the chamber movement. And that's really why this chamber was created, to be very specific and curate support for women-owned businesses. The Chamber of Commerce, of course, so the structure is that for every Chamber of Commerce that already exists, we are working with those Chambers of Commerce. So we're not new in a sense, right? So there are about 71, 72 city-state chambers across the country. And within each Chamber of Commerce, there is a Women Chamber of Commerce in there already. So that's the structure. So we're not necessarily creating something new in a sense. We're just using this as an opportunity to curate strategic and specific support for women-owned businesses. Now, some of the pillars in which we work with within the chamber is really 4. There's the capacity building, and you cannot take away the importance of capacity building for women-owned businesses. In fact, for businesses in general. But of course, because the chamber is focused on women, the capacity building that we do will be focused specifically for women and women-owned businesses, right? And capacity building is wide. Capacity building across the skills to actually do business, across financial literacy, across leadership, across mentorship, across really just understanding the business side of things and ensuring that women are able to get curated support for that. There's also the access to finance. We do know that access to finance for women-owned businesses is a major deal. So we're intentionally curating support within that sphere, and really just seeking through the different alternatives of financing that could come to women-owned businesses. So we're looking at grants, we're looking at debts where possible, we're looking at investment, we're looking at equity, right? We're really just thinking through what are the ways in which we can financially support women to be able to grow and scale their businesses within Nigeria. And then, of course, market access. It's one thing to start a business, it's one thing to finance your business, but then you need customers, you need clients. So market access is extremely important to us, and this is one of the ways in which the Chambers of Commerce has been known, for across the world. It's not just, we're looking at market access not just locally, but also internationally as well. The chamber movement is a trusted movement, so across the world we can create market access opportunities for our women entrepreneurs through the Chambers of Commerce across the different countries. So that's one of the different things that we're bringing that not every other women support organization has. We have that leverage. Plus we also have the leverage of NASIMA. And if you've been watching very closely, currently NASIMA has been, spearheading a lot of advocacy and support for businesses across the country. So we also have the leverage of NASIMA. And then, of course, we will continue to put our voices to advocacy and policy dialogues where necessary to ensure that we're able to, advocate for enabling environments for women-owned businesses to thrive. So really, these are the 4 pillars in which we're currently working with to ensure that we're able to just intentionally curate support for women-owned businesses and give women-owned businesses within the organized private sector a voice, to ensure that we're actually bringing the right resources to them and we're exposing them on the right platforms and, just curating that intentional support for women-owned businesses. Yeah, so you talked about access to finance. Your experience, I know you were once with a microfinance bank to create some of those packages for finance loan for women and all of that. What are some of the hurdles, to accessing fund? Well, I don't just want to say fund now because, you know what the interest rate is like in Nigeria, but accessing fund and the cost of fund. And how do you hope to, deal with that? So I wasn't with a microfinance bank, but we partnered with a microfinance bank to create unique products and services for women-owned businesses. And I think I'd like to address this question from 2 folds. There's the issues from the banks in themselves, right? When a bank sets criteria for accessing loans or financing from them, but the voices on the table that are setting that criteria are not inclusive enough, you begin to find that the criteria that is being set is already excluding a number of people, and those are some of the issues that we saw. If you're asking for criteria for a particular kind of, if you're asking for collateral as criteria, or a particular kind of criteria, which is usually will be land, will be cars, will be, houses, you're already eliminating a number of women because not a lot of women can have those kind of requirements to be able to take those loans. If you're looking through the filling of the forms, the kind of questions that are being asked on the forms, you do realize that these are questions that are already eliminating women-owned businesses or women in general from accessing loans from the bank. So those are some of the issues that we saw and worked with this bank to be able to streamline these services a bit more to ensure that women had a bit more advantage, to be able to access those loans and were comfortable enough to access the financial institution, to access the loans. If you look at it from the point of the women themselves, the first thing is the financial literacy. That is a huge gap. Right? There's one thing to understand financing, but especially when it comes to your business, do you understand inventory management? Do you understand bookkeeping? So we saw quite a number of, we saw a huge gap in that area. And then there's also the point of women being very risk averse. They're not, they don't necessarily want to take loans because they don't understand it. And because some of the times you've listened to somebody who's had a bad experience with their loans, there's the fear of, oh, I don't want loans, I don't want anybody to come and take my house or to come and take my, lock my shop up or anything. But it's really because there's no financial literacy. You don't understand that when you're taking loans, the loans must be going into something specifically in your business that has the capacity to bring that money back. Right? So those were some of the issues that we saw. And in curating the products and services that were in partnership with the bank, those are some of the things that we try to address. So in addition to getting the loans, there were incentives for women to take these loans. There were incentives for women to start saving, I think one of it at the time was if you save up to 3 months, it's a particular amount up to 3 months, you then get access to health insurance, right? So we set incentive across the different products. So there was a saving product and a loan product. So those were the things that we were really just thinking about. How do we ensure that as we're creating programs or products and services for women, we're intentional about doing it in such a way that women can have access to whatever it is that you're providing for them.
All right. Sounds like a whole lot you have to think and put together into one package. But you said you're doing this for the rest of your life. So we do wish you the very best, Director General of Women Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture in Nigeria. And thank God I'm a woman, so I can always call on you if I need any of those, any help in those areas.
Anytime.
Thank you, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, Rini. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, now let's do a little bit of the market numbers just to refresh your memory before we get intraday numbers. That will be at 1 p.m., obviously. All share index for last week was in the red, slightly in the red, 0.04%. I think I'm just glad that we're still holding on to the 100,000 level, even though it's red, because it was really risky, and we're still doing 56 trillion. Naira activity chart for the week last week was more of red. We see volume value in the red, and then the deals in the green. Banking, of course, we know they were on fire last week. I guess they will still be, because Access Score has gotten approval for its rights issue. So it's going to be very busy at the markets. And banking, there you have it, 3.87% is what they gained at the close of last week's trade. And consumer goods is lagging behind at this time. Industrial goods, 0.22. Insurance, we talked about insurance getting traction, the penny stocks getting attention, and we're seeing some of their full year release and all of that, and I think it's attracting some investors. Oil and gas on fire, just a couple of them, a handful of them. If you're lucky enough to have stocks there, that means you're making some money. I hope it's not temporary, but that's the much we can take. Let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studios.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Yes, we'll turn our attention to security now. And as you've seen, that we're joined by Brigadier General John Temlong. He's a former army officer and also was the first commander of the Multinational Joint Task Force and former president, Alumni Association of National Defense College and Security. He joins us virtually. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, there are yet again concerns about security. These abductions, this one happened in Kaduna over the weekend, and it raised a lot of questions as to, in spite of all that seems to be done, when these kind of things happen, it will always raise a lot of questions, such that we wonder, okay, so what did we do wrong? How do we retool? How do we re-strategize? Are we getting or missing something? So you tell us. This comes off the recent meetings that defense chiefs also had the army in Jos. So what's your take on how we're handling this challenge of kidnappings and dealing with banditry in the country?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and my heart reaches out to the families of those who were abducted recently. It's quite unfortunate that we have been discussing these same problems over and over. The security forces or the armed forces have a grasp of what they are doing. Just last week, the NATSEL, the Nigerian Army Day celebrations, were held here in Jos, and there was a topic, a lecture too, that was given on these areas. But the unfortunate thing is that the security or the military has been talking more to itself, and those who are supposed to be protecting are not interested in coming to such fora. When you talk of a whole of society approach, that's what the strategy now that has been adopted to deal with these complex security problems that are befalling Nigeria. The society itself doesn't seem to be interested in knowing its roles and how it comes in to be able to be protected by those who are there working day and night and putting their lives on the line to protect them. So there are certain basic things that the society should do to complement the military efforts, and that's what we say the whole of society approach. Everybody is involved. Like Clausewitz, one of the legends in strategy, said, it's a trinity: government, citizens, and the security forces or the armed forces. Now, how do the civilians or how do the society come in? Some of these people, all of them, they live with the society. Within the society, they don't live off the ground. They feed with us, they play with us. Some of us are their informants. Some of us know who they are, the bad guys are. And because it is so lucrative now that you have even highly placed citizens are enjoying from the process of crime. So it makes it more difficult, and those enjoying some to protect those who are perfecting these crimes, protect them using their offices, their mice, and their connections and reach. Because the process of crime is so lucrative, it's being enjoyed all over, from bottom to down. Unless something is done seriously, this society approach even includes the concept of the rule of law. Our judicial system working the other way. We start to politicize crime. Crimes that should be dealt with as a crime, we politicize it and bring certain things that you see people going to negotiate to release that these are their people, these their people, and the rest. You see that one playing out even at the levels of state governors and senators recently coming out to say, look, they want to negotiate a political settlement or a settlement for the release of Nnamdi Kanu and the rest. So you can see these are some of the things that even though that I commit an offense and the law does not is not effectively used on me, I know that there are people there who come out and say, no, these are our boys, they are our thugs, they are politicians, they are our supporters and the rest. It doesn't discourage me from committing the crime. The law there itself is put as a check to protect or prevent people from committing offenses, because if you know you commit a crime, there are consequences. But if there are no consequences, the same society start treating people with gloves. They will cry today, the next time when they arrest those people who are involved in those crimes, people will start saying, no, they should leave them, they should do this and the rest. So that is so complex. So unless the society itself, like I've been saying before, unless we Nigerians decide that we want to take back our country from criminals, nobody will take it back for us.
I mean, Mr. Tamlong, I want to be able to. I want us to be able to hone in on that statement, because you've repeated it 3 times. Where, when these crimes are committed, I mean, this particular one that happened in Chukwu, and of course, these are journalists and their families, so it's a very worrisome situation. It means it does seem as though this was targeted at these people. Now, there seems to be some sort of resurgence, and correct me if I'm wrong, with what happened in Ngoza, And then now we're hearing about this bandit situation that happened in Kaduna. It does seem like there is some sort of resurgence. The military keeps telling us, look, this is a situation where these people have been decimated and are looking for ways to seem relevant again. Do you agree with that? Or are there lapses? I mean, you used to be in charge of the Multinational Joint Task Force. Are there lapses on the ground that you can point out to us that's caused these things to happen?
Well, for me, as a strategist and a military commander, what happened in Gaza is typically telling me that the terrorists are losing. They are not able to face the firepower of the military. So what they are now doing is hitting the soft targets. So it means that they did not have the strength or the combat power again to start facing the military. So I think what the assessment of the military is quite right. For you, you think is something resurgent. No, they are now hitting soft targets. And that's why the society comes in. Because if you found out that these people went to a wedding and then she was carrying a baby, but there are certain indicators. Any human being about to die or in that, no matter the situation, you will see it on the face. There will be some jitters, there will be some sweating, there will be some telltale signs that this is a bomber. And so it means that we should stop going to sleep. That now that they are now coming back to the citizens' soft targets, the citizens must be the one to be able to isolate them and get them in, and make sure that they don't create more havoc to them. So one of them, the ones who was arrested, it was the telltale signs that led to the arrest by the military. So I think we need to do that. But on the other hand, for the journalists, you see, they are targeting journalists because they know that you will make a lot of noise because rightfully you are the ones who control the third step of the rim. So if you are making that, it gives them more publicity. It makes people, the aim is actually to create fear and to create a sense that the government cannot protect people. So that's what they want. So if you see yourself being targeted, it's a strategy that they are bringing in place to make sure that they create maximum fear in the population. So I think that's a strategy that they usually do. What the aim of the terrorists is to control using fear. So I think we should get hold of it, get the citizens to be able to fish out these people. It's not a resurgence, but one of the major sources of getting money or quick money is by kidnapping in this country now. Because when they kidnap, ransom are being paid and the rest. So I think, we should, because these kidnappers live there. Because if today I start spending money way and above my income, people should ask questions. But nobody asks questions these days.
So let's talk about that a bit, Mr. Temlong. You just mentioned right now that it is a franchise. We've heard so many state governors and people, even from the military, talk about how kidnapping is now the new franchise, but it feeds on something. It gets members from something, and that thing is poverty, widespread poverty. If people, of course, there's no excuse for crime and criminality as a person. You should be decent, but there are situations, around the country where we see people at a point where they have no choice but to go into crime and criminality. And we've heard the military say, look, while we're doing the kinetic ones, while we're trying to catch these bandits and terrorists from everywhere, the poverty in your state, Mr. Governor, is responsible really for the markets where these people can be harvested from. What do you make of this non-kinetic approach? Are we seeing any changes in that regard in our country right now?
Definitely the problem of bad governance, or in fact, absence of governance creates this situation. And that's why you talk of the whole of government and whole of society approach. What are the state governors doing? Every time there's a push to the federal level, what is the President Tinubu doing? What are the Chief of Defense, the Minister of Defense, the Chief of Army Staff, what are they doing? But what are the governors doing? What are the local government chairmen doing? you find out that, look, it is the same elite who do not even want the local governments to work. Now, if that level of government is not working, this poverty you are talking about it will continue. Yesterday, I sat down with my own local government chairman, and I said, look, there are ways we can go about this thing without even the government at our own level. What can we do? Poverty is endemic.
Pardon me, just give us a minute. We need to just bring in our correspondent who is monitoring the fuel situation in Abuja. There's some scarcity, several people queuing up. They can't seem to get petrol. They woke up to that this morning. They don't know what is going on. There's been no statement yet from wherever. So we're trying to find out what is going on. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, is at one of those stations this morning to bring us up to speed on what's going on. Dele, what have you found so far?
Yeah, good morning, Chamberlain. Well, it's not a good exercise here in the nation's capital because, again, motorists have started queuing since around 7 a.m. You have two fuel stations here. One is the Cornwall filling station, and of course, you also have another total filling station just down there, down the road. But of course, people have been on the queues since 7 a.m. They started selling around 8:30. You can imagine how much manpower hours that will be wasted today. Well, just in the last 10 minutes, there's a statement from the NNPC. Just like you said, that there's been no statement yet. But me shown here, and it says disruptions of ship-to-ship STC transfers of PMS between mother vessels and daughter vessels resulting from recent thunderstorms and the consequential flooding of truck routes which constrained the movement of PMS to Abuja from coastal corridors. Well, the truth is that we spoke to some motorists about 5 minutes ago about this matter, and they said, look, we can't keep saying this is the same excuse every year. Last year, we had this same issue. You remember that the roads were bad around Lokoja, and of course, the trucks couldn't come in up north. And the same thing is one of the excuses that are being given. And so motorists are expostulated. Why do we have this same problem every year and we can't deal with it? Of course, the NNPC is saying it's not their problem to fix the roads. Theirs is to get the products to the Nigerian coastal waters and then truck them up north. But they can't repair the roads. And so if we had the same issue last year, we had the same issue 2 years ago, why do we still have the same issue this year again? We're saying because there's flooding around Lokoja, trucks cannot come up north. But Chamberlain, that's not the only issue. I reached out to Ipman this morning, very early this morning, and Ipman is saying something entirely different from the NNPC Limited. Ipman is saying that there were rumors that a particular refinery owner, I mean, we can't mention names because of free adverts, has said that you roll out PMS by July. Of course, he had started with the aviation fuel and the AGU. And a lot of fuel importers said when he started rolling out his AGU, the price of the AGU fell from over 1,000 naira to 950. And so there were fears that perhaps if he starts rolling out his PMS, and they've imported the PMS with loads of money, I mean, millions of dollars, and it crashes the price, they may operate at a loss. So Ipman has their own stance, and of course, the NNPC has their own stance. But the truth is, Chamberlain, long queues this morning, and of course, you know, as usual, the guys who sell the black markets, you can see them all around here. They're having a field day. I asked one of them, how much is this 10 liter, this small keg, this 10 liter fuel? It goes for 11,000 naira, Chamberlain. That's wow. Like an average of almost 1,000 naira per liter.
Wow. I mean, Dele, this fuel scarcity in Abuja, if you can hear me, this fuel scarcity in Abuja, we started seeing signs of it since Friday, actually. I remember I was on a queue on Friday because I couldn't believe the queue I was looking at. Are they even selling? Because what we noticed, at least what I noticed over the weekend, was that many of the filling stations were locked up. You've been around town, I think, a bit this morning. What's it like? Because I'm seeing that they're selling in the station, the Cornwall behind you. What's the situation looking like? Are they selling, you know, or do we have a situation where these filling stations are locked up?
Well, I think we'll try and get that connection back. We lost him for a bit. So I wonder how the president will feel about this. You know why? He retained the Ministry of Petroleum as the Minister of Petroleum Resources and Gas, as a matter of fact. So he's got to, this can't keep happening time and again. And then when there's rain, you have this challenge. When there's a loading problem, you have this challenge. And yet, this resource is where I think Nigeria relies on this sector for over 80% of our revenue.
For something so crucial to our revenue as a country, it does seem like it's so fragile. Rain falls and the road is bad, or this happens and that happens. It's a little too much.
I don't understand this. Ayo.
Well, it's a whole load of conversation altogether, if you ask me. Well, you know what? The conversation we are having with the general it's equally very, very concerning. And this, you know, that you're talking about is one of those linkages a number of people would say to poverty, how poverty affects things, you know, altogether in all of this conversation. Well, you know, let me bring back the general that we are talking about. We have just a few minutes to go on the program this morning. Now, on the one hand are the issues that you've spoken about, but then something that you said about the fact that kidnapping is a way to make quick money. That's a very, very concerning statement, isn't it, General? Given that we know it is a crime and we know it's a way in which people make money, it would seem like we are, as a nation, abetting. Can you hear me, General? General, if you can hear me, I'm just asking in response to a question you asked you raised the other time, the statement you made the other time, that kidnapping is a quick way for people to make money. I'm just wondering, this has been going on for a while. As a society, could we be seen to be aiding and abetting? Okay. It seems that the general can't hear me. So, Dele, well, there was a question the other time that Kayla posed to you. I'm not sure that you got the message, but let me just put mine. It would seem like, is it something that the authorities are not just aware, but actually doing something about? As you said, it's something that's gone on. This is the third year in a row. And Chamberlain also raised the issue the other time that the president is still the Minister of Petroleum Resources. So, is it something that you think only the NNPC is left to deal with, or there is something being done by the Ministry of Works and the other concerned authorities?
Which one is? You can call the call and call back.
Can you hear me, Dele? Okay, well, Dele can't hear me. Let me give it back to you guys, because the question that I'm actually very interested in knowing, Chamberlain and Kayla, what the general will say to that question of whether or not we're abetting, aiding and abetting as a nation. Given that this has been going on for a while, he said kidnapping is a way that people make quick money. And this has been going on for a while. And is it so intractable, or we're actually aiding and abetting? I'm wondering, Chamberlain.
General, can you hear us? Okay, I think you're muted, so we can't hear you. I think that's what's going on. You need to unmute yourself.
I've unmuted myself.
So much better, so much better. All right, so
I can hear them.
The answer to the question we asked, sir.
What's the question, please?
We said with kidnapping becoming a franchise, what can subnationals do? Because we cannot, if there's massive poverty and non-kinetic measures to combat banditry are not being, used at subnational levels, then we're basically feeding these bandits and terrorists with people who will join this franchise. What can be done in the interim?
I think the subnationals hold the key to effectively tackling these problems of criminalities at their levels. It's not a federal thing. The problem of bad governance, lack of inclusivity, and then the local government is not functioning. It's a major problem that is hindering against the fight against criminality. Now, you can see that we have been talking about local governments having autonomy, but it has been resisted by the elites. Now, if the local governments are not functioning, then what happens? The states, in fact, the monies that are meant for the local governments are not even being spent at the local government level. Like I was saying yesterday, we discussed with some of my local government chairmen, the two, Langtang North and Langtang South. I said, look, in the days past, we had the local government created a body of contractors who became employers of labor within the local governments. And money was being spent within the local government. So the question of poverty, staring and hunger, staring at people at the bank were reduced. Now, there were places where you could go in a get menial jobs for the day, being given by the local governments. But that's not the case now. Even the state governments had what you call divisional engineers offices in all the local governments, that laborers could go and work and get money. Today, those sources of money have been closed. Even in districts, you had agricultural officers who are giving money to people, laborers to create this erosion control mechanism in those areas. All those things are gone. So the question of even getting daily stipends for laborers is not even there. So the monies of the local governments are spent at the state capital, and the monies of the state are spent at Abuja or in other world capitals. So even when you hear that some 1.something trillion was being released from the federation account, how much does it go down at the subnational level? It doesn't. So you need money to be in circulation. That will increase the purchasing power of the citizens. And once this is happening, the criminality will drop itself. Here over and over. Have you actually observed that during political campaigns, crime rate reduces to a bare minimum? Because all those kidnappers, all those armed robbers and the rest join the political trends of the campaigners because they know there's money they get at the end of the day. It is when you start governance that money now moves back to the national capital or to international capitals in Dubai, London, and US and the rest, that now they are left face to face to start harassing the criminal citizens on the streets. So we need these people to start doing seriously. The amount of money we are spending on governance is too astronomical. When there is a depression like this, you spend on capital projects so that citizens can start getting employment. Once the laborers are getting money on a daily basis, the market woman, the woman who cooks food, the woman who makes kunu, the woman who makes akara and pap will be getting money every day because laborers will eat. They need energy. But once there is nothing and you are moving all the monies out, people are left with nothing. In fact, the sad aspect now is that they go to the farms and buy off the farm produce at very, very ridiculously low rates. They will tell you that a bag of rice, they'll price your farm.
We have to thank you for talking to us this morning. We really do appreciate your time here today. Brigadier General John Temlong is a former Army officer and the first commander for Multinational Joint Task Force. He was also the former president, Alumni Association of National Defense College and Security. Always a pleasure to have you on, General.
Always a pleasure. Army officers are retired. They are not former. Thank you very much.
We hear you loud and clear. Thank you. Well, Dele, we also do hope that this scenario will very much improve. But any further information you can give to us at this point in time? Any more response from anyone out there?
Right now, as I speak, it's just Ipman and the NNPC Limited. And both excuses, a lot of Nigerians are saying it's not tenable. We've spoken to like 3 people who have queued here since about 7:30 a.m. this morning. It's not a palatable situation. The government should repair the roads and local jets to ensure that the trucks can flow up north. There should also be a template to ensure that anybody who is refining in Nigeria can sell side by side with anyone who is importing their petroleum products. So lots of Nigerians are saying we keep going through this circle every time, and there's no solution in sight. But of course, they are wasting a lot of manpower right here on the queues.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, Dele Omoyeni, just monitoring the fuel scarcity situation in Abuja metropolis. Well, there is some situation at the moment here in FCT as well. There's a gentleman who the National Emergency Management Authority, the Fire Service, the FCTA command are trying to save. He climbed this particular mast at Astro Radio trying to commit suicide. But they are all trying to prevail on him. He dropped a suicide note, as a matter of fact. So the note is all out there. But the authorities are there at the moment trying to see how they can address all of that matter to ensure that he doesn't do that. Yeah, that's where he is. How he climbed there, who knows? We'll bring you more updates on that one as we get them. Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Usof. Goodbye.
Have a great week ahead, and please check your mental health. I'm Kayla Magwa.
And do make it a profitable week. I'm Ayo Makinde.